So something every developer will face is a bug. And what better way to get rid of bugs than with using a debugger? So what is a debugger? A debugger is just a development tool that you can use to pause your program at a certain line of code, and then you can step through your program line by line and then track certain variables in your code that you're interested in, and also track the flow of your program. The first time I was introduced to a debugger was in university, and my professor was showing it to us and he was raving about it, but I didn't see the value of it at the time. And that's because it was a command line interface debugger, and those seemed too complicated for me, and I'd rather just put a printf statement there and see what the value is using a printf statement. But when I got into my job, we were using debuggers in our IDEs. The first time I really used a debugger was at my current job, and we were using it in our Eclipse IDE and Visual Studio IDE. And it was really helpful for me at the time because I had no experience in Java, I had no experience at C++ at that time, but I was able to use this debugger to gain understanding of how the programming language worked and how the code base I was given worked. In my next job, they asked me to code in C# and I had no experience in C#, but it was okay because I had Visual Studio and I could use the debugger with that one also. So like I did in my previous job, I was able to gain a lot about how C# works and also how my code base worked. There are two main reasons why debuggers are really helpful, and the first one is it allows you to look at certain variables while the program is running. So you can pause the program and it's kind of like looking at the state of the program. It's like you run your program and then you pause it at a point where you think there might be a bug, and then you can say stop, I want to look at the state of the variables. And so you look at the variable values and then you can see what is the state of your program at that point in time. Alright, the second reason why debuggers are really helpful is because it allows you to see the flow of your program. A lot of times in my company, if we have a question on at what point does the program come to this part of the code, we would just put a breakpoint there and then run the program and then see at what point does the program get to that line of code. And then we can trace back to see what function called it. And so we can gain a lot of information about our program through the debugger. So debuggers are really helpful. It doesn't matter which programming language you're using. I've used it in C++, C, C#, and Java. And I've used it in many different IDEs too, like Eclipse, Visual Studio, and Visual Studio Code. And it can be overwhelming and confusing at first to use a debugger, but when you get used to it, you realize that you can't code or debug without it. So in this video, I'll be going over how to debug in C and in Visual Studio Code and do it on a Mac. So my name's Henrik and I'm here to teach you the software skills and tools that you need to grow in your software development journey. So let's get started. By the way, if you're in the early stages of your programming journey, I've got a special gift for you. It's called my 30-day beginner coding challenge. And it's a guide that will take you from no coding experience to building your first 4 projects. And the best part is it's free. It's a free gift to you. In this coding challenge, I guide you in 30 days to build 4 programming projects, and I give you some tutorials that are in C. But of course, these projects are really generic and really beginner friendly, and so you can actually code them in different programming languages. You can still benefit from this guide because you can just take the principles that are in my challenge and then apply them to your programming language. You can find the challenge in the link in the description, and if you download it and pay attention to what it says, you'll definitely learn some fundamental programming concepts that will give you a good foundation to your software development journey. So a developer was doing my 30-day beginner coding challenge and he sent me this screenshot. He was asking for help on how to fix his bug. So this program is the first project of that guide, and the first project is a tip calculator. So the user is asked to enter T or Q, T for tip and Q for quit. And then if you select T, or if you enter in T, then you enter the bill, and here it's $500 or whatever currency. Then the tip percentage, and then the number of people that are eating at that place, and then the tip amount is calculated, the total bill is calculated, and the shared cost is calculated. So that's the first iteration of the program. And then the program will ask again if you want to calculate another tip or you want to quit. And so Syed, the developer, put in Q, and he got this issue. He got this bug with his code. It's printing these lines of code and he's wondering what's going on. So he sent his code to me and this screenshot, and we're gonna try to debug it using Visual Studio Code. Alright, before we look at Syed's code, I want us to look at a really simple example so that you don't get lost later. So if we run this code with our debugger, Alright, so it printed hello world. So now you may notice that it looks the same as when you run it normally, and that's because we didn't put in any breakpoints. You need to put in a breakpoint for the program to actually stop at a certain part of the program. So let's put a breakpoint here. Alright, so now we see these two windows coming up, variables window and watch window. Watch window is you can just put in any variables you're interested about, and then it will show you the value of those variables. But we don't have any variables here, so there's nothing to show. Alright, so let's run the debugger with this variable. I just put in a random variable here. It's not doing anything. So let's run this. So it comes in here, and variable is still set to 16224. Now we can add this to the watch window. So if you right click this, and you can't see it, but at the bottom there's a menu item called add to watch, and I'll show you a screenshot. This is what it looks like at the bottom. You can just select add to watch. So there, now it's in our watch window and the variable value is 16224. But if we continue, go to the next line of code, we can use this step over to go to the next line of code, and this one here means just to continue, and you can select F5. If you do this, then the program will just continue and continue going until it hits this breakpoint again, or at some other breakpoint. It's just gonna run like normally. This one is if you want to step just one line of code, and then this one is if you want to step into the function that's being called, and this one is to step out of the function that's being called, and this one is to restart your program, and then this one is to stop the program. These two are more complicated. We're not going to worry about these ones right now because our program right now is pretty simple. We only care about the step over one to go to the next line of code, and there you go. The variable is now 1 because we set it to 1 here. So now it's 1, and then we continue the program, and it says hello world. It prints it to the console. So if you do this, it's going to end the program. So this is the end of the program. Alright, so this is Syed's code. Let's run the program and see the issue happen. So he did T and then 500, 10, and number of people is 5. So there you go. The first one is calculated okay, but then for some reason it doesn't allow you to put T or Q. It starts to ask you to enter the bill, and then you can just he selects Q, and then it prints all these things, and he's confused what's going on. What bug is going on here? All right, so the first thing is, how do we get the debugger to work? So if you look at this part of the Visual Studio Code, you'll see there's a play button. This is how you run the program. But if you look down at the other options, you can do a debug. If you do debug, a lot of times you'll run into this issue. So we're going to choose GCC or CLang for our compiler. I like GCC better. So we have all these things coming up, so it can be kind of intimidating at first. It may ask you to allow permissions to your documents folder or wherever you're coding in. Just say okay, and then we have this pop-up happening. We don't know what that's about, and then it has the printf here in this debug console, and then if you try to enter T, it says unable to perform this action because the process is running, is what it says. So this can be annoying and confusing, but don't worry, I'll show you what you need to do. So let's stop the debugger first, and we want to be able to have the program run in terminal. So what you need to do is you need to go to your extensions, and then you look up C/C++ runner. And it's this extension by Franek94. You install this one. And then if you go through here, you'll see there's 2 more options here. And there's 2 options here. You'll see that this is for the debugger, and this is just for running it. Alright, so let's just run it and see what happens. So it looks kind of like the other runner. This runner, it looks similar. It runs in the terminal, and then you select T, 500, 10%, 5 people, and then Q, and then you get the same thing that Syed was showing me. Alright, so now let's try to use the debug runner. So if you use debug, and then it compiles and runs, and then there you go, you have it running in your terminal. It's not in the debug console anymore like it was earlier. It's now running in the terminal, and now you can actually put inputs in here. You can do T, kind of like what it was done earlier, and then we do this, we do that, and then boom, 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 where it's the same result as earlier. And the reason why it's the same result as earlier is because we didn't put any breakpoints in here. So let's put a breakpoint right here before it prints this statement. So let's run that with the debugger. Alright, so we're at this printf statement and we haven't printed it yet to the terminal yet, the terminal output. So if you do this once, it goes to the next line of code. So we step through again, and then now it prints the printf, and now it's asking for you to enter the tip. So the program is somewhere in between lines 12 and 15. Here it's waiting for that character. So we put in T like Syed was doing, and then boom. Now we are able to move on to the next line because the program got the character from the user input. So now it's going to go through and continue and step through. So now it's on line 15, and here we can look at the choice. So I'm going to select that and add it to watch, and it's going to show up right here. So it says T. If you just step over again, alright, so like we expected, it's going over from the if statement to the else statement because this is not true, so it didn't go in here. Now we can continue to step through. Alright, so now we're somewhere between 21 and 22, and it's asking us to enter the bill, and that's because there's a scanf here. So we do 500 like Syed did, and now the program continues. It's gonna ask for the tip percent. So here you're stepping through the different calculations. You can actually observe what calculations are calculated by just hovering over and looking at the values. So bill was 500. So now it prints the tip amount, and then it's about to print the total bill, and then shared cost, and then we're done. Now if you're Syed, you're going to expect that we get to input our choice again, because this is the second time we can choose to calculate the tip or to quit. So if we step through, what we realize is the program doesn't actually ask us to input the character. For some reason, the character that is stored in choice is already the end of line character. So that already gives us a hint. Oh, the get char is not working as intended. Choice is not working as intended. And that's because the program didn't allow us to input anything. The program's not letting us input anything because it already picked up a value. And where did it pick up this end of line character from? It probably picked it up from when I hit enter earlier. When I hit 5, there's an end of line character right here. I pressed enter to enter the 5 as the number of people. So it probably picked it up over here. Alright, so the real question here is there a way that for the second time, instead of reading the end of line character and storing it into choice, can we just skip the end of line character? And there is actually a way that we can skip that end of line character. We can use scanf, and we put a space and then %c. So when we put a space here in scanf, we're basically telling scanf not to read any white spaces. We're going to skip all the white spaces until the next character. And so when we get the next character, we store it into the char variable here. So now let's run the debugger again, and then we can see what happens to the choice variable in the second time that we go through the while loop. So let's run that. So we're going to do T, and then 500, 10, 5. Alright, so we did that the first time. Now the second time we went to the while loop, now you can see T was stored correctly when I inputted T this time. So now let's see what happens. Is it going to pick up the end of line character here? It should not. It should just skip the white spaces and then ask for the user to input a new character for choice at this point. So let's see what happens. So F10, and there you go. Now it's asking the user to input another character. So now if we input Q, and then let's put a breakpoint here and see what the value of choice is after I select Q or input Q. So I'm going to input Q, and then boom. Now we're in the next line, and there you go. Choice is indeed Q. So now it's going to be able to exit as we expect. Alright, there you have it. That's how you can start using a debugger in Visual Studio Code, in C, and on a Mac. And you can start using debuggers not only in this environment, but also in other environments like Visual Studio, Eclipse, or any other IDEs or any other programming languages. The concept, the idea, the main idea is still there. Alright, like I mentioned earlier, if you're just starting off in your programming journey and you don't know where to start, you can download my 30-day beginner coding challenge. And it's a 30-day guide where I teach you how to build those 4 beginner programming projects. It's really beginner friendly, and I go step by step on how to build each one and go through the tutorials that you need to build each one. So download that in the link in the description. I hope you really liked this video, and I hope it really helped you out in your coding journey. If it really helped you out, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, I know debuggers can be really complicated at first, can be overwhelming. So if you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comment section, and I'll be sure to answer you there. And if you have any other questions or any other topics that you want me to cover, please let me know in the comment section, and will read every comment that you put in there. So don't hesitate, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.